Hi, folks, and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Little Recent podcast. Soon, I'll be joined by Adele, an American blogger who is a 7th of October survivor and has been living just across the border with Gaza since the early 70s. Adele is also the responsible for the Facebook community Life on the Border with Gaza, things people may not know, but should. So there are plenty of reasons for you to stay around. You will hear how was the 7th of October from someone who experienced it herself, and also how the dynamics between Israel and Gaza have changed for the last 50 years. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. It will be very helpful to boost the content. And I will see you in a sec.
Hi, Adele. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I'm very keen to this talk. As we were discussing just before we started recording, I've been to Israel 6 times. I met Israelis from different parts of the country. I was even very close to a lady who was living until the excavation happened on the north. She was living in Metula, in the first house after the Lebanese border. But I never spoke to someone who is based near the Gaza border. So it is something new for me. So I'm very keen to talk to you, not only 7th of October, but also how it is to be that close to the Gaza Strip. But let's go back in time, and let's go to the time you were still in the US, which was still early 70s. So you did Aliyah. If you can tell us how did it happen, what your motives, how did your family react? Just let us know. Everyone is interested.
My background.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I was born in the States, grew up in New York. I was in a Zionist youth movement as a teenager. And at the end of high school, I came on a gap year program with Young Judea Year Course. And I fell in love with the country. But of course, I went back to the States at the end to go to university, like all good Jewish girls are supposed to do. And then the Yom Kippur War broke out in 1973. I came back in August 73, and October 73, the war broke out. So I said, well, what am I doing in the States? Israel needs me. And that's when I came to live in the state, in Israel. I came to live farther south than where I am now. I went to live on a kibbutz called Keturah, which is just north of Eilat. It was a new kibbutz. It had just been handed over as a civilian community from the army. And that's where, as soon as I came, I was given my draft papers because it was still wartime, and I was drafted into the army. And I arrived at Kibbutz Nirim as a part of my army service. And that was in 1975. And I've been there ever since. So Kibbutz Nirim is a kibbutz. Do you want me to explain what kibbutz is?
Yeah, some people may not know, so why not?
So kibbutz is a little village, but it's communal, it's socialistic. And it used to be even more socialistic in the days before the state was founded. And the earliest kibbutzim were started in the early 18th. Sorry, rewind. You're going to edit this, right?
I got it. Yeah.
In the early 20th century, and so at the beginning, in all of the kibbutzim, the children, they didn't have money, so the money was invested in the kids, and the kids had children's houses. so that children of the same age, more or less, slept together and lived together, so that the parents had more modest apartments, smaller apartments, and they would be able to go out to work at 5 in the morning. Most of the kibbutzim at least started out being agriculture, and everybody who earned any money went into the kibbutz treasury, and then each family got the same stipend. Each member of the kibbutz got the same stipend, regardless of what job they did, if they were the dishwasher or the CEO of a company. And we celebrate holidays together. There are committees. It's democratic. It's run democratically, and different people are voted in to fulfill the different jobs on kibbutz. And my kibbutz privatized in 2011 because we realized that young people these days did not want to live in the more socialistic way. And children have slept at home. My older kids slept in the children's houses, but the youngest one, who was born in 1990, was the first round of kids that never slept in the children's house at all. So kids today sleep at home. The houses are bigger. Each person gets their salary, puts it into the kibbutz treasury, and then we get taxes taken off, and what's left over comes into our bank account, so we can buy cars and build the house like more or less like we like. I mean, there's limits, but so that's what kibbutz is today in 2024. And our kibbutz community is very important. We celebrate holidays together, and we support each other. And a kibbutz without community is kibbutz is so much more than just the homes and the fields and the dining room. It's community, and community is what builds resilience, and it's a very important aspect of kibbutz life. Yeah. So our kibbutz is located 2 kilometers. That's about 1 mile away from the border with the Gaza Strip, which means that when there are rockets that are launched at us, we get an incoming rocket warning. And we know that we have between 0 to 10 seconds from the second you hear that warning till the second you hear the explosion to get to someplace safe.
That's nothing. For some people,
it's nothing. Our houses are small, but still. So each house within 7 kilometers of the border, because of the situation of the mortars, which often don't even trigger a warning. You just hear boom, and you know that you got to take cover because there might be more. So every house within 7 kilometers of the border has to have a safe room. And so it's a reinforced concrete room with concrete walls and ceiling to withstand the impact of a rocket. And that we have a special door that you pull closed and click, and there are prongs that go into the walls, and that's what would prevent the door from blowing open if the house is impacted elsewhere and there's an implosion. And there's a heavy iron sleeve on the window that you pull closed in times of missile fire. And if there's periods of threat, I close it beforehand. I don't wait. And it has thick glass as well. So ever since when I went to live there in 1975, it was not a war zone. It was peaceful and quiet, and sometimes there were tensions, but not rocket fire. There were times when there were threats of infiltration, but we have a fence that encircles the community, and there's also a fence along the border, and the IDF are there, and I've always felt secure living there. Since the Hamas started coming into power around 2000, we started getting rocket fire. So at the beginning, it wasn't where we live. It was further up north to Sderot, which is a city that's about a kilometer away from the border. And that's a nice big target to shoot at. When they would shoot at us, especially then, the rockets were not very advanced, and they couldn't really aim very well. So most of the time, the rockets would just explode in the fields and didn't do much damage. So in the early days, they didn't bother really shooting at us a lot. But as their capabilities improved, so did their aim and the rocket fire. And I think the first rocket that exploded in my community was about 2006. So that was a year after we pulled out of the Gaza Strip. You know, people say that the talk against the occupation, and we are not occupying the Gaza Strip. In 2000,
that's what I want to say. Where you live, it's not considered a settlement. No, it's Israeli territory, and it's not disputed.
Where I live is Israel proper. It's not disputed territory at all. There have been certain maps. There was a period where there was the Geneva Initiative, where there was a plan to swap land for peace. And if that had gone through, then much of our fields, the Western fields, would have gone over to Gaza. The border would have been closer to us. But theoretically, it would have been a peaceful border, so that shouldn't have been a problem. And we would have been more than happy to give up land, to have a peaceful border, and to live in cooperation and collaboration with our neighbors. But that was never accepted, like any of the other peace agreements that were offered to the Hamas. To Palestinians at first, and now to the Hamas. It wasn't always, the Hamas only came into power in the early 2000s. So until 2011, we did not have safe rooms. It hadn't been required legally. And the first round of violence that I personally experienced was the escalation that happened in 2008-9. And for that escalation, I evacuated my kibbutz in 2007, we already realized that if there is an escalation, we're going to have to evacuate, and we didn't want to rely on the government doing that. We had our own plan in place. So when this escalation happened, most of the community evacuated. I too wanted to evacuate, but I had dogs, so it was complicated. But as I said, to be in a war zone without a safe place, without a safe room, is terrifying. And I had, just a month before, I had lost my husband. He suffered from bipolarity and committed suicide in November 2008. So I did not have the wherewithal to remain behind in a war zone without someplace safe to be, so I also evacuated then. In subsequent escalations, I stayed behind. I was stronger. As I said, we got our safe rooms in 2011, and the safe room that were, until they built the safe rooms, we had bomb shelters. About 6 bomb shelters for the whole community. We're a community of 430. well, we were, as of October 7th, before, like in 2008-9, I think we're a little bit less, but with 6 bomb shelters spread around the community and 0 to 10 seconds to take cover, it's not effective. Bomb shelters were fine for a different kind of war, for the Yom Kippur War, for the Sinai campaign, for wars that came before that. For rocket fire, 0 to 10 seconds, not enough. So in my house, I have my own bomb shelter, as I said, the safe room, and I do not sleep there. Some people sleep there all the time. People that have children, that's often the children's room, so that if there's rocket fire in the middle of the night, you'd have to start waking the kids up and trying to run with them. They're already there. So throughout the years, there have been escalations, periods of rocket fire, or even between the escalations, there have been periods of sporadic rocket fire. And the way I deal with things like that is I don't do victim well. So when there's an escalation, when something happens, I blog, I vlog, I open the Facebook group that now has 13,500 followers. I blog for the Times of Israel. I give interviews. I do Facebook Lives. I talk about what's happening. I tell the world what's happening, because what goes on in Gaza when there's an escalation is horrible. But it ain't no picnic on our side either. And the world does not realize that, does not understand that. Certainly not until October 7th. Until October 7th, the world thought that everybody who lived where I do runs around with a flak jacket and an Uzi, and like we're all little soldiers, and they don't realize that we're just normal people.
Yeah.
We're parents and children and grandparents, and there are quadriplegics and elderly with walkers and all sorts. Everybody.
It's like people like everywhere else in the world. There are people who are older, people who are younger, people who go to school, people who go to work, unemployed, artists. It's just, I think there was a myth about the Israelis, that the Israelis were a different species. And I think that's rooted on ignorance. And maybe the October 7th, if there was something good about it, was it showed some humanity.
That it showed what?
That showed some humanity. There were some people there, like suffering. Maybe not everyone could see it, but at least some.
Yeah. So I'm going to fast forward to present day. I had 4 children, 3 that I gave birth to on my own, and 1 that I inherited from my second husband. And if you had told me that one of my kids was going to come back and live on Nirim, I would have said, fine, but for sure not Lilach. Lilach was my daughter who was scared of infiltration from the time she was a child. But she fell in love with somebody else who was born on Nirim, and he wanted to live no place but Nirim, and she wanted to live any place but Nirim. So in the end, they settled down on Nirim and had 3 children. So as of October 7th, I lived on Nirim with, and on Nirim, I also had my daughter, who unfortunately is now separated, but my daughter and 3 grandchildren also lived on Nirim on October 6th. October 6th, we had a big party on my kibbutz, because we're one of the 11 points, 11 nekudot. In 1946, David Ben-Gurion, the state was founded in 1948. 1946, David Ben-Gurion wanted there to be a Jewish presence in the Negev, so that when the country was formed, when it was announced as the state of Israel, he would know that there are communities in the Negev. So my kibbutz was one of those communities. And so It happened Motzei Yom Kippur, the evening after Yom Kippur. The people who lived on Nirim, the people of my community, in 1946 went out in the middle of the night into the desert, put up 4 walls and a roof, which at the time was recognized by the Ottoman law that was still respected then as a structure that could not be taken down. And there were 11 different communities that same night that put up these structures. So we don't celebrate anymore on Yom Kippur, Motzei Yom Kippur. We celebrate now on Simchat Torah. So October 6th, we had a big, beautiful, wonderful celebration, celebrating 77th anniversary of Kibbutz Nirim. And we had lots of visitors, and my daughter, Lilach, was in charge of the cultural aspect of the kibbutz. So she was in charge of this party, and my grandchildren slept that night with their dad. And one of my other sons came for the festivities. He spent the weekend visiting. He lives in Tel Aviv, but he came down to be with us for that weekend. He also, it's his birthday on October 8th, and he was just about to embark on a 3-month trek. So he came down that weekend, and he was with me in my house that weekend. And before I went to sleep on October 6th, I told him, I'm an amateur photographer. So as I said, I feel secure in our area. And before I went to bed, I told him, if you don't see me in the morning, don't worry. I plan on getting up before the sun rises to find this field of wildflowers that a friend of mine took a picture of at sunrise. And I want to go find them and take a picture there at sunrise. That's how safe and secure I felt on October 6th. Safe enough to get in a car in the dark by myself and drive out into the fields. I knew that we have the army and they have our backs, and that was the sense of security that I felt that night up till October 7th. Luckily on October 7th, I was too tired to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, because if I had not been too tired, I would have been where there were many, many terrorists. And I would not be sitting here talking to you today on your podcast. At 6:30, we started getting incoming rocket warnings. And I jumped out of my bed and I ran to the safe room, which is where my son was sleeping. It's also my guest room. And I ran in and closed the door behind me. But the barrage was so heavy that I was scared to stand up and close the window. And that's important, because if a mortar or a rocket explodes outside the house and the window's open, you're not safe in the safe room. It'll penetrate through the window. And we realized that it was such a heavy barrage that went from north of Tel Aviv to south of where we are, hundreds of rockets being shot off at the same time. We realized that this was something different. And after a while, we got notification. We weren't getting any sort of formal notification. And on the TV, also the TV was open, and when there's incoming rockets, there are pop-ups on the side of the TV in Israel, like these orange pop-ups that have the name of the community that's being targeted by a rocket. So that the TV was full of these pop-ups. But nobody knew what was going on. And they were showing pictures of trucks, tenders driving around the city of Sderot with terrorists. And I said, this can't be real. These are pictures from Pakistan or Iraq, or this has got to be fake news. I'm turning the TV off. So it was way too much information for me going on there, turned the TV off. And so I only had my cell phone to rely on. And there was nothing official coming in. And the only thing we were told at one point we have an internal messaging system. We were told Israel has been invaded. Go outside your safe room, lock all your doors and windows, and then go back in and lock yourselves in the safe room.
Mm-hmm. Just a question there. When they said that Israel was invaded, did they tell from which part? Because it could be from the north, could be from Gaza, could be from... So no one
knew.
No
information.
Okay.
Israel has been invaded. That was it. So if you go back in my Facebook group, you'll see me doing a live.
Yeah, I saw that.
Walking around and saying, well, they told us to close all the doors and shades. I don't even have proper shades on some of my windows. It's just like a shade that you pull down because I like lots of light in the house. So I took the blinds off many of the windows and just have just a flimsy paper shade that I pull down. And one of the doors is glass, like a 90-year-old grandmother could kick it down, even if I lock it. So, I'm walking around and saying, okay, I don't really think this is going to be necessary. They're not going to get this far. We're 2 kilometers away from the border. The IDF will get them before they come to us, but I'll humor them. I'll close everything and be a good girl and do what they say. And went back into the safe room. But the problem is that the safe room doesn't lock. It clicks, as I explained before, to prevent it from blowing open. But anybody on the outside can open it. And the only way it can stay locked is by you on the inside pulling down on that handle. So my son was with me, and he was sitting there in front of the door, ready to pull down on the handle if we heard the house being infiltrated. And we just wait. And again, the only information we're getting is from the internal messaging system that is people saying, we hear shooting outside. And again, 430 people live in my community. I know everybody. I know where they live. And I'm watching the messages calling for help, saying, we hear shooting. We hear Arabic outside our houses. And I'm watching them coming closer and closer to where my grandchildren are, closer and closer to where my daughter is, closer and closer to where I am with my son. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, there are people that went outside and got a knife, a kitchen knife. I didn't even think of that, because if my house gets invaded by terrorists with machine guns, what's the knife going to do?
Yeah.
After a while, we start hearing sounds as well of automatic gunfire near our house, and Arabic outside our house. And we hear a noise outside our house that we didn't know what that was. And my son, who understands a little bit of Arabic, said, somebody's calling somebody away. We looked at each other, told each other that we loved each other, and basically said goodbye. And waited for the terrorists to burst in. I was sure we were not going to see another sunrise. So my son's sitting by the door, pulling down on the handle, and I'm sitting on the bed trying to keep track of what's going on. And all of the people are saying, where's the IDF? Where are the people that are supposed to be coming to save us? There's an IDF base 5 minutes away. And we have first responders in our community, but their job is to hold the fort 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There were only 4 of them that were outside that day and active. All in all, usually there's about 10 that are first responders. Some of them were away on vacation. Some of them had just come back from vacation and hadn't gotten their guns yet. Some of them were like my son-in-law, who was a first responder and had his gun, but his 2, 6, and 8-year-old girls, Ziv, Raz, and Yuval, were in the house with him, and he couldn't go out and leave them. So there were 4 active first responders, while there were tens of highly armed, well-trained terrorists running rampant, shooting through our community. Unbeknownst to me, at around the same time that we were hearing that noise, my son-in-law's house was being invaded. He heard the terrorists coming into his house. He heard them breaking things and shouting things, Allahu Akbar, and he told my 3 grandchildren, hide under the blankets. You're going to hear a loud noise. Don't come out from under the blanket no matter what. He raised his gun. He waited until he saw the handle. He didn't hold on to the handle. He waited till he saw the handle starting to move. He kicked open the door and shot the terrorist that was right in front of the door, opening the door. You know, I was thinking about it the other day that we lost people in our community, but we didn't have any children that were kidnapped. And all of a sudden the penny dropped. Just a few days ago, my grandchildren would have been kidnapped or murdered. If he had not been there with his gun, I would have lost them that day. After a while in my house.
Can I just ask you, like, from the time that you heard that Israel was being invaded till the time you are telling now, how many hours have passed, more or less?
From the time the rocket started until he killed the terrorists?
Yeah.
It was about 3 hours.
3 hours, yeah.
3-4 hours.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the timeline.
Yeah.
In a situation like that,
quantify, yeah.
The timeline goes all wonky.
Mm-hmm.
About an hour after we heard the noises, I was in physical pain. I had to go to the bathroom. So I quietly opened up the door to my safe room so that I could go to the bathroom. I endangered myself and my son, but I was not going to do it in front of my 32-year-old. And I walked out of the safe room, and as I opened the door, I saw that the slats on the window opposite had been broken. That's what we heard. The terrorists were on my front porch. They tried to open the door. It was locked. They started breaking through the window and got called away. So divine intervention or dumb luck or my late husband watching over us, we will never know. They moved on. All the while we were seeing calls for help coming through the internal messaging system. People saying that the terrorists were in their house. People saying that their house was on fire. The terrorists, when they couldn't open the door, they took spare tires from cars outside, brought them into the houses, piled rags and spilled kerosene on them, set it on fire, and set the houses on fire. We have 30 houses in my community that are designated for destruction. In this last week, they started putting up corrugated iron around that entire section of the community, and eventually bulldozers are going to come and just bulldoze them. That day we lost 5 people were murdered. 5 people were kidnapped.
Do you know what happened with those who were sent to Gaza?
Sorry?
If you know what happened to those who were abducted or kidnapped, is there any news about them?
So three of the people who were kidnapped were women, and they were released in the prisoner exchange in late November. The other 2 were men, and they were with, one of the men, Nadav, was kidnapped with his mother, who was released, and the other man, Yagev, was kidnapped with his wife, who was released. So we knew, when the women were released, we knew that they were still alive, at least. Since then, we've gotten notifications. The Hamas are masters at psychological warfare, at psychological terror. So they made a clip of one of them, of Yagev, saying, was he talking? I don't remember. They showed him moving. They showed him, I don't remember if he spoke or if he was, it was like a clip and you could see him moving. But they said the IDF bombs didn't kill them, but he died of starvation.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. There was a clip that was released. They showed him with a black eye. And he's saying, my name is Nadav Popovel, I'm 51 years old. The truth is, by the time they released that video, he'd already turned 52. The Hamas said in that video that he had been in hospital, but when the IDF entered the hospital, he was killed. Again, we didn't know anything about him until about a month ago, when his family was notified that he was no longer alive. And in fact, today was 30 days, the 30-day ceremony for his announced death. We don't know exactly when he died. We don't even know if it's true.
Yeah.
We don't know.
No, as you said, the Hamas, they are masters at psychological terror, and they really know how to, manage this warfare. So everything that comes from their end, it's uncertain. You cannot take anything for granted, and I think that's another thing on top of what's happening. That everything is so random.
I have a friend, Judy, who's 70 years old. She's from Kibbutz Nir Oz, the kibbutz next door to us, and she was out walking with her husband in the fields. They would go for sunrise walks every morning. And when the barrages started, on a WhatsApp group that I had with other teachers from our school, she was a colleague and a friend. We saw that she'd sent a picture of the fields. So we realized that they were on their walk. It was only a few days later that we realized that it wasn't a picture. I'd spoken to her children and told her that I have this picture that she sent of the fields, and they asked me to send it to them so that maybe they'd be able to figure out where they were, because they hadn't been, they were listed as missing at the time. So I went back and I saw that it was a clip. And in the clip, you hear the shooting, you hear the incoming rockets, you hear Judy and her husband Gadi talking to each other, whispering to each other. And what the family knew, there was a recording of them about 10 after 7, where Judy was calling for help. She called up the emergency services. She said that her husband had been shot. She thinks he's dead, and that she'd been shot in the hand and the face. And we were told that they had been taken captive. So when I got my dog tag that says, "Our hearts are hostage in Gaza," on the other side of my dog tag, I engraved their names so that when they come back, I'd be able to give it to them. In December, we were told that they had been murdered on October 7th, both of them.
Yeah.
This is a 70-year-old woman. She was an English teacher. She was a mindfulness teacher. She was the sweetest, funniest. When we thought that she was captive, we were saying we could just imagine her sitting with the other hostages and doing mindfulness activities. They lied about her too. In about March, they made a clip of her. They didn't show her moving, they just showed a picture that they'd gotten off the internet or something. And they said that, like Nadav, that she too had been in the hospital and was killed when the IDF invaded. But we were told that they'd been murdered. We were told in December that they were already dead. So that's why, go know what to believe.
Yes.
Maybe they're not really dead. How do they know? I can't understand how the IDF know. Nobody was with them. The Niroz people that were taken were together with Nirim people, and they were taken from Niroz. Judy and Gadi were taken from the fields. Nobody had seen them at any point. So somewhere deep, in the back,
Yeah.
I have a little hope. Maybe they're alive.
Yeah, we need that. I think we all need some hope. Otherwise, it's impossible to cope with what's happening. So we need that.
I lost that day more people than I can count. I was a teacher in our school for almost 4 decades. It's a small region. So I have a list of names of people that I know that are gone. All of a sudden, the 7th of October, there must be about 70 people, at least, that I know who were murdered or kidnapped. Former students, parents of former students, children of neighbors, friends, colleagues, over 70. Gone. And today we were evacuated under fire to Eilat, where we were for 3.5 months, at which point we moved. The kibbutz realized that if we don't find another alternative, people are just leaving. Because it was a wonderful hotel, and they treated us royally. They couldn't do enough for us. Anything we needed, they were there for us. But you can't live in a hotel room with young kids for 3.5 months. It's just, people were leaving. So the kibbutz organized together with a committee, a government committee, organized apartments for whoever wanted to come to Beersheba, which is much closer to home. It's only a 40-minute drive. And we all have these beautiful apartments. I'm on the 21st floor, 20 floors above where I'm used to living. But it's not home.
Yeah.
And we're refugees in our own land. And
since the October 7th, have you had the chance to visit your kibbutz?
many times. I've even slept there twice. I'm
And
there at
how
least.
How was it?
I'm there at least once a week.
Hmm.
I'm going there tomorrow. In fact, I was there on Sunday. I go with potential donors. I go with people from the media, take them around tomorrow. I'm going with a group of tattoo artists who have come to Israel to tattoo, who do tattooing for healing purposes. And I'm bringing them to my kibbutz to hear the stories of what happened on our kibbutz, to see with their own eyes what happened to our, what we used to call 95% heaven. And then a delegation from the American embassy are coming. So the kibbutz, very early on, first of all, our dairy, we're based on agriculture. We do not have a factory. Our dairy was the first dairy that was up and running within 24 hours. They were milking our cows. Because if you don't milk the cows, then they'll get sick and die. So within 24 hours, there were still terrorists running around the area, armed terrorists. They were back milking the cows. They couldn't take any of them. They couldn't send the milk to market because the tankers weren't allowed. It still is a closed military zone, but then now tankers allowed to come in. Then they weren't even allowed to come in. During the period of the prisoner releases, late November, there was a ceasefire. So the landscaping people started coming back to Nirim to start working, to cut the grass, to tidy up the place. And since about mid-December, they work there every day. So the farmers are back and they're working in the fields, not the fields to the west of our kibbutz, between us and the Gaza Strip, but other fields. We have avocados that need to be picked. We have, and many volunteers have come to help us straighten up the kibbutz, to help us with the agriculture. So the kibbutz looks beautiful, except for where it doesn't, except for the section that has been burnt and shot up and destroyed. I could show you pictures. Can I screen share here?
I think you can, yeah.
Or I can send them to you. I can send them pictures.
Can send them to me and I'll put in the...
Yeah, I'll send you some pictures. Or you can go on, you can go on my social media, on TikTok and Instagram. I'm Zionist on the Border, and I have clips there. I'm making clips telling the stories of what happened in different houses. So you can see from there. You can use those clips and show them.
So I think yesterday you were in the Knesset together with another fellows trying to make sure that the government is going in the right direction. And how was it going, the conversations between the people that were in the kibbutz when the Hamas invaded Israel and the authorities? Like I see a lot of discussions in the Knesset, in many Israeli streets. How was it going?
So Every Monday, there are committees that meet. So every Monday, at least, the families of the hostages go and sit in the committees and talk about things that are relevant to that committee about the hostages, to make sure that, not everybody, not all of the hostage families, not all the people really believe that everything that can be done to get the hostages back is being done. So I do not like taking a stance with that, because I'm just an English teacher, retired one at that. I do not feel that I have enough knowledge or experience to say, let them all, stop the war. Doesn't matter what happens, just stop the fighting and get the hostages back and, cease fire and make a deal. As opposed to, there's no way that even if we make a deal that that they're going to let the hostages go, because Sinwar has no reason really to let the hostages go, and nobody even knows where they all are. No, I don't believe that the Hamas even know where they all are, because it was such a mess. So, maybe going in and just keeping up with the military pressure, maybe that's the answer. How you do that, how you go around destroying tunnels without killing hostages that were in there, I don't know. And I certainly would not be presumptuous enough to say anything about that. That's not my job. We have politicians, we have an excellent army who let us down on the 7th, completely, totally. Didn't get to us for 11 hours. Didn't get to my kibbutz for 7 hours. And I was in the safe room for 11 hours till they got to me. But I trust them. They know what they're doing. If anybody in the world knows what they're doing now in Gaza, it's my army. So I went to the Knesset to I held up Judy's picture, to stand behind the families of the hostages who were sitting there and talking, so that if the cameras, it's all about the cameras. So the cameras are there in these Knesset meetings, and we want the pictures, the faces of our friends and neighbors and family to be on the screen when anybody's talking, to be front and center up there all the time. And that's the purpose. That's what I was there for yesterday.
Yeah. In one of your interviews, I think it was with Virag, I remember well, you were talking about that Gaza could have been the Singapore of the Middle East. And they turned out to be something completely different. And you were living, but you are still living close to the border. So can you expand a bit more on that comment? I think people will be interested in knowing what was the firework and what was your impression of the Gazans, because there were Gazans coming to work in the kibbutz. So maybe you got some insights that most of us are not able to access.
So in our kibbutz, people from Gaza have not worked in our kibbutz for 20 years. They've worked in fields, they've worked in other communities, not in our kibbutz. And there was this concept in Israel that everybody bought into. The prime minister, all the way down, saying that if the people in Gaza have good lives, if they can put food on their table and clothe their children, then it makes the area safer for all of us. And that was what I believed also. And for years, since 2014, I've given countless tours on my kibbutz, and I always end the tour by the western side of the fence, by the western side of the kibbutz, where you can see Gaza in the distance, telling people, I am sure that the people on the other side of that fence just want the same thing that I do, that the great majority of the people just want what I do, food for their children, safety, to be able to clothe them. On October 7th, I realized that I got my numbers wrong, because the Hamas have been doing such an excellent job of educating generations of Gazan people, Gazan children, Gazan people, to hate us, that it is not the great majority. Because when our kibbutz was invaded, there were between 80 to 100 of the Nukhba, who were the armed, trained terrorists who came in and destroyed and burned and killed and kidnapped, did as much damage as they could. But then there were the Shababim. The Shababim were just your everyday Muhammad on the street, who was called up and told, come on in, we've conquered the communities in Israel, take what you want, destroy what you want. Men, women, and children invaded after us, burning cars, stealing things. My son-in-law lost everything that was in his car. They broke into his car and they stole his wallet and his ID and his glasses, and they just took whatever they could. They took so much garbage that weeks later, the army were finding bags of loot just abandoned in the fields, because, they just took children's toys and everything, and they just, just threw it away afterwards because it was weighing them down. So since then, I've been saying, where were the good Gazans?
Yeah.
Now, I've been in touch with people from Gaza. I've done educational activities with people from Gaza. There was something called the Gaza Youth Committee, who were teaching children differently, whose goal it was to teach them that the people on the other side of the border are not their enemies. We had a plan for doing a collaborative clip of children on our side and children on their side singing a song in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. A song that was in the Eurovision, sung by Achinoam Nini and Miri Awad, who's an Israeli Arab, talking about how there must be a different way, that war can't be the answer. And that's what our kids were going to sing together. And we started practicing, and they started practicing, and we realized that the camera was not going to be able to be on their faces, because that would have endangered them. But they would have recorded their singing and, shown just from the back. But the Hamas got word of that, and they were endangered, and the project stopped. And there were other educational activities that we did. So I know that there are people on the other side who do have more Western values and do realize that if there's collaboration between the peoples, that everybody will benefit and everybody can prosper. Thousands of Gazans were allowed to come into Israel every day and work. And many of them were grateful for it. But in order to be able to come to Israel and work, they had to get not only permission from Israel, get the security check, but they also had to get permission from the Hamas. They had to pay from the money that they were paid, they had to pay the Hamas a chunk of it to let them come in. They had to pay the people that were driving them to the border and from the border. And yet it was worth their while to come into Israel and work. So where were all those thousands of Gazans who were able to feed their families? Why did so many of them think that the answer would be to come and kill and torture and rape and destroy Holocaust survivors and babies and pregnant women? Where does all this ruthlessness come from? If not from the training that they've been given, they're getting it from their mother's milk already. They're taught in kindergartens to hate us. I'm sure you've seen the clips of kids in Gaza in the kindergarten, the end of year play, dressed up as IDF soldiers and Gazan fighters and killing them and teaching them to take them captive. And this is what they're being trained to do. Those children who were in those kindergartens grew up to be the monsters who raided my kibbutz on October 7th.
Yeah, and I would say that some of these trainings, or at least the material that was used, couldn't happen if the road, the UN, the EU, and a lot of NGOs wouldn't have given them billions for decades. And I don't see the road reacting to that. Actually, and it's the opposite. Like the road is turning on Israel. So the hate, unfortunately, is not only coming from the neighbor countries, but also from the world as such. So I'll be very interested in knowing how do you see the growing anti-Semitism, especially in the US, since you are American.
It's just shocking. I was in the States late April, early May. I was brought to the States to attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner as a guest of one of the channels. And then I went around talking to I went to churches in different communities talking about what I'm talking about, what I'm telling you now. And then we went fundraising for my kibbutz so that we can rebuild and go back home. And I was there at the height of these demonstrations. And I was just shocked. These are the best and the brightest of America. This is what's happening to them. This is what they're learning to do. And of course, Qatar has been paying money into these universities for decades already, and they've just lulled them to sleep while they've been instilling these anti-Semitic tropes, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel training and many of the people that were in these protests weren't even college students. They were brought in from outside. And of course, the college students, supposedly educated, don't even know which river and which sea. And it was just embarrassing, sickening, worrisome, scary as hell. Scary.
Yeah.
So it's been hard, and it's still hard. We have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go before we could go back home. And we need to work very hard on building resilience, on preserving community, so that we have community left to go back with. We're not going to be able to go back for at least half a year. And I estimate probably more. But we will. Not everybody's going to come back. Each family are going to have to decide for themselves what they feel safe enough with. I truly doubt that my daughter will come back to live on Nirim after all she went through, almost losing her children that day, after all of the years of her fears, seeing her worst nightmare on steroids come true on October 7th. But I will, and many like me will. We will go back, and that's why I went around the States, and we're organizing more tours to talk and raise money, because we're going to go back and build bigger and better and stronger and safer than ever before, so that it is not 95% heaven, it will be 100% heaven. And families with young children are going to feel safe enough to come and join us and come live there again. And I invite you to come visit when you're in Israel again. I will be happy to meet you on Nirim and take you around. And if I'm back living there, I will bake you brownies.
I'm 100% on board with that idea. Maybe 100% is a underestimation. It's 1,000%. I would love that. And actually, I've been thinking, the next time I go to Israel, I don't go straight to the beach. I don't go straight to the Western Wall. I will go straight to where you were living when those attacks happened. That's the first place where I'm going. And after this conversation, I have no doubt about it. I don't care. I don't care if there is a party on the beach or a football game, and I'm very much into the seaside and football. But I will go south. That's it. And it's recorded.
Okay, I'm putting it in my calendar.
You can put it in your calendar. Yes, yeah. Actually, I would like to go. I want to share that with my girlfriend. So you're going to be the second person hearing this. I would like to go on my birthday, which is a Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day, 14th of February. So maybe next year, 14th of February. Yeah. So maybe not next year in Jerusalem, but next year in Nirim.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for you.
Good. That's a fantastic way to close this chat. Look, thank you so much for your testimonial. It was powerful. Now, I'm here to support every single of you. I know you're 270 days. I don't know. I cannot make a comment on that. It's just beyond my talent. So sorry. I want to make a comment. It's just too sad to say anything at this point. I want to express my solidarity. My heart is with everything that was affected. So I really pray that things will go in the right direction, and we can all meet in Nirim. So,
and the only way we can have victory is if all 120 of our people are home. We have to bring them all home. The ones who are alive, to bring them home to their families to heal, and the ones who are no longer alive to a proper burial, to be able to be buried in the land of Israel, which is no less than they deserve.
Yeah. Again, that's a very beautiful sentence. So thank you so much for your wording, your work with the community before the October 7th. After the October 7th, I think you do a fantastic job. I'm going to put in the description the link to your Facebook group. I've been a member for maybe 10 years. You know?
Oh, really?
Yes, Joe. I'm a quiet member. You know, I'm just a watcher.
Okay.
But
amazing.
We can do another deal here. When I visit you, we will do a selfie, and I will have my
We'll
face.
what selfie? We'll do a Facebook Live.
Facebook Live. Yeah. Sorry. I'm not as tech savvy as you. So.
Okay. Looking forward to meeting you in person, Victor.
Yeah, we will do it. So thank you so much, Adele. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.